3 weeks after I finished paying off my $38,000 Toyota Tacoma, I came home to an empty garage. I called my mom furious. She said, "We gave it to your sister. She has kids. You can buy another." My sister had already wrecked 2 cars that year. I didn't argue. By 6:40 a.m., 2 officers were blocking the Tacoma in my sister's driveway. The garage door was up when I turned onto my street. I could see it from 2 blocks away because the light inside was still on, the overhead fluorescent I leave running when I know I am coming home after dark. The light was on. The garage was empty. I pulled into the driveway and sat in Della's car with the engine running, looking at the oil stain on the concrete floor where my Tacoma had been parked for 4 years. The stain was shaped like a boot print. I had made the final payment on that truck 21 days earlier. $38,000 over 5 years. 60 monthly payments drawn from a checking account I opened the week I started at Consolidated Freight. Not one of them missed. Not one of them late. Not one of them paid by anyone other than me. I remember the morning the last payment cleared because I checked my balance on the app while sitting in the truck in the Consolidated parking lot, and I put my phone down on the dashboard and looked at the steering wheel and said out loud to no one, "Done. The lien-release letter arrived on a Tuesday." I held it in both hands and read my own name printed as sole owner. I put the title in the fireproof lockbox under my bed and drove to work the next morning feeling like the truck weighed less, as if paying it off had physically changed the vehicle. 21 days later, the garage was empty and the fluorescent light hummed over nothing. I called my mother. Beverly answered on the second ring, which meant she had been waiting. People who are not expecting a call let it ring 4 or 5 times. People who know the phone is about to ring pick up before the second tone finishes. "Mom, where is my truck? We gave it to your sister." Her voice was level, rehearsed, the way she sounds when she has already decided something and the conversation is just a formality. She has kids, Nadia, 2 boys who need to get to school. Her license situation will be sorted out in a few months. You can buy another one. You have always been good with money. I heard Hank in the background. My stepfather. He cleared his throat the way he does when he wants Beverly to know he is present but does not want to be part of the sentence. "Mom, that truck is in my name. The title is in my lockbox. You do not have the authority to give away my vehicle. Gina needed it. She has wrecked 2 cars this year and she cannot afford another one. You drive to an office and sit at a desk. She drives 2 children to school and to the doctor and to their father's house 3 weekends a month. You do not need a truck, Nadia. You need to stop being selfish. How did you get it out of the garage?" Silence, then Hank's voice, closer now. "I used the spare key, the one you gave your mother 3 years ago for emergencies. This was not an emergency." Beverly came back. Her voice was different now, harder, the voice she uses when she has decided that kindness is no longer the strategy. "You bought a truck you cannot even fill. No car seats in the back, no soccer cleats on the floor mats, no school bags, just you and a paid-off loan and a garage with 1 vehicle in it. Gina's boys need to get to school and to the doctor and to their father's house on weekends. You need to get to an office where you file titles for trucks that are not yours. Take the bus, Nadia, or buy another one. You have always been good at buying things instead of building a family." Hank said my name, not to defend me, to signal that the conversation was over. I hung up. I sat in Della's car for 4 minutes. The garage light was still on. The oil stain was still there. The lockbox under my bed held a title with 1 name on it, and that name was mine, and no phone call from my mother changed what was printed on that page. I did not call Beverly back. I did not call Gina. I walked inside, opened the lockbox, and took out the clean title. Then I picked up my phone and called the non-emergency police line. I am a fleet compliance coordinator at Consolidated Freight. I manage vehicle titles, registrations, lien releases, insurance declarations, and DOT filings for 42 trucks. I process title transfers every week. I know what a clean title looks like because I hold them in my hands 5 days a week. I know the difference between a gift, a loan, and a theft. And I know that when a vehicle titled solely in one person's name is removed from that person's property without their consent, the legal term is not generosity, and it is not borrowing, and it is not family business. The term is unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. In this state, that is a criminal offense. I filed the report at 11:40 that night. The responding officer came to my house. He was young, maybe 26, and he had the careful manner of someone who has learned not to take sides in a family call until he sees the paper. I showed him the clean title, the vehicle registration, my driver's license, and the empty garage. I walked him to the garage and let him stand in the space where the truck had been, the fluorescent light still on, the oil stains still visible, the concrete walls holding nothing but cold air. I explained that my mother and stepfather had used a spare key to access the vehicle and had driven it to my sister's address without my authorization. He took notes. He asked if there had been a prior arrangement, a verbal agreement, a text message suggesting I had consented. There was nothing. The last communication from my mother was a text saying I was not welcome around them anymore. He photographed the text. He asked if I wanted to pursue charges. I said I wanted the vehicle recovered first and the incident documented. He filed the report, gave me the case number, and said a unit would be dispatched to the address I provided. I did not sleep well that night, not because I was angry, because I kept looking at the empty garage from my kitchen window, the light still on because I had not turned it off, and thinking about the 60 payments I had made to fill that space with something that was mine, and how quickly a spare key and a phone call from my mother had emptied it. At 3:20 in the morning, I walked to the garage and turned off the fluorescent light. The dark was worse than the empty. I turned it back on and went to bed. At 6:40 the next morning, my phone rang. The officer on the line said 2 units were at Gina's address. The Tacoma was in the driveway. Gina had answered the door in a bathrobe. Her 2 boys were eating cereal at the kitchen table behind her. The officer confirmed the VIN against the plate and title copy I had provided. It matched. I drove Della's car to Gina's street. The morning was cold, and the sky was the flat gray color of a day that has not decided what it wants to be yet. The Tacoma was parked at the curb with a patrol car behind it and another blocking the driveway at an angle. 2 neighbors had come out onto their porches. A man 3 houses down was standing in his robe, holding a coffee mug with both hands. Watching, a woman across the street had paused in the middle of walking her dog. The dog was pulling toward the patrol car, and she was not pulling back. Gina was standing on her front steps in pajama pants and a sweatshirt with the hood up. Her arms were crossed so tight her knuckles were pressing into her own elbows. Her eyes were red and wet. She looked at me with the expression of someone who has been told a story about themselves and is now being asked to stand inside the story while strangers watch. "You called the cops on your own family," she said. I did not answer her. The officer asked to see my title, my driver's license, and my vehicle registration. I handed him all 3. He compared them, checked the VIN plate on the dash through the windshield, and nodded. He handed me the keys. Hank had left them in the center console, along with 2 receipts from a gas station I had never been to. The gas Hank used to drive my truck 20 minutes across town. I got into the Tacoma. The seat was pushed back 6 inches from where I keep it. The mirrors were angled wrong. The air freshener Gina had hung from the rearview mirror was shaped like a pine tree, and it smelled nothing like my truck. I pulled the pine tree off the mirror and set it on the curb. I drove home. The garage door opened with the new code I had set the night before. I pulled in, turned off the engine, and sat in the driver's seat with both hands on the wheel. The oil stain was underneath me. The fluorescent light was on. The garage smelled like concrete and motor oil and the faint, sharp edge of cold air that leaks in under the door in November. The truck was back. The title was in the lockbox. But something was wrong, not with the truck, with the silence that came after. Because my mother had rehearsed that phone call. She had been waiting for it. And people who rehearse their defense before the crime is discovered do not rehearse for a single act. They rehearse because the act they are defending is part of a longer, older, more careful performance. And I did not know yet how long the show had been running. If you have ever had your own family take something out of your hands and tell you it was never really yours, you understand what that silence sounds like. If stories like this feel like yours, you are listening to Family Secret Tales. 3 days after I recovered the Tacoma, my phone rang at work. The caller identified himself as the finance manager at Pacific Auto Credit. He said he was calling about a missed payment on a 2022 Chevrolet Equinox, loan number ending in 4471, original loan amount $24,000, co-signed by me. I had never co-signed anything in my life. Not for Gina, not for Beverly, not for anyone. I have spent 4 years at Consolidated Freight watching what happens when a co-signer does not understand what they signed. I have seen fleet owners lose personal vehicles because they guaranteed a truck loan that went sideways. I know what a cosign is. It is a promise written on someone else's risk. I had never made that promise. There must be a mistake, I said. I do not own a Chevrolet Equinox. I have never co-signed a loan with your institution. He read me the application details, my full legal name, my social security number, my employer listed as Consolidated Freight, my address, my signature on page 4 of the origination packet. The original loan was $24,000. The vehicle was totaled in a Dewey in August. Gina's insurance had paid out $9,200, but the remaining deficiency balance was $18,600. As co-signer, you are responsible for the deficiency, he said. I asked him to send me a copy of the origination packet. He said it would arrive within 5 business days. I thanked him, hung up, and sat at my desk staring at the screen where I processed title transfers for 42 trucks. My Tacoma was worth $38,000. The Equinox cosign exposed me to $18,600 in deficiency. Between the truck my mother had physically taken and the loan she had invisibly attached to my name, she had put nearly $57,000 of my financial life at risk without asking me a single question. And I did not yet know whether the number was finished growing. I pulled my own credit report. The Equinox loan was there, opened 14 months ago. My name, my social, my address. I had never seen it before that morning. The monthly payment was listed at $412, and not one of those payments had been made by me, because I did not know the account existed until a stranger called my desk phone and told me I owed money on a car that no longer had an engine. I called Della. She is my closest friend and my coworker. The woman who trained me my first week at Consolidated 4 years ago. On that first day, while I was standing in the fleet yard trying to learn the difference between a 26-foot box truck and a 28-foot, Della walked up and clipped a small metal wrench to my lanyard. "First day, first tool," she said. "You will not need it for title work. But you will need to remember that you started here on the ground, not behind a desk. That wrench is still on my keychain. It is the first thing I touch every morning when I pick up my keys." When my father died 3 years ago, Della drove to the funeral and sat in the back row and did not say a word during the service. Afterward, she handed me a paper bag with a bottle of water and a granola bar. She said, "Grief is physical. Eat something." That was the moment I understood that Della is the kind of person who does not tell you how to feel. She tells you how to survive the feeling. I called her. She picked up on the first ring. I told her everything, the truck, the recovery, the cosign call from the dealership. "Your mother put your name on a car loan for a vehicle your sister totaled in a Dewey?" Della said. "Yes, and she never told you." "No. She took my truck, sent me a text saying I was not welcome, and waited for the lender to find me. Della was quiet. I could hear her breathing and the sound of her kitchen faucet dripping. Then she said, "Nadia." She did not take your truck because Gina needed transportation. She took it because the cosign was already out there. She knew that sooner or later that lender was going to call you, and when they did, you would start looking. The truck was the exit. The exile was the lock. She was trying to shut the door before you opened the file. I did not say anything for a while. Della let me sit in the silence. She is the only person in my life who understands that silence is not absence. It is processing. "Nadia," she said, "the woman who taught you to drive a truck just stole one from you. File everything, and do not let anyone in your family make you feel guilty for reading a document that has your name on it." That sentence rearranged everything. The rehearsed phone call, the immediate exile text, the speed of it all. Beverly had not acted out of love for Gina. She had acted out of fear that I would do exactly what I was doing right now, sit at a desk, open a screen, and look at the records. That night, I sat on my bed with the lockbox open beside me, the clean title inside. My name, one name, the title was still mine, but the cosign was out there, attached to my credit like a second shadow I had never agreed to cast, and none of it had my actual signature on a single page. I almost closed the lockbox and decided it was enough. The truck was home. The title was clean. I could dispute the cosign and move on without ever speaking to Beverly again. But the finance manager had said the loan was opened 14 months ago. That meant my mother had walked into a dealership or sent someone into a dealership and signed my name on a page she had no right to touch while I was at my desk processing title transfers for other people's trucks. That was not a mistake. That was a rehearsal for everything that came after. I met with an attorney named Oaks on Monday, 44 years old, clean desk. He took notes on a laptop and asked precise questions. When I finished, he looked at the incident report, the credit report, and the cosign origination packet I had received that morning. "We have several separate issues," he said. "The vehicle report is already documented and the truck is recovered. For the Equinox cosign, we file an identity theft dispute with the lender and an affidavit with the FTC. I also want to request the Tacoma's title history through the DMV using the VIN and your incident report. If your mother attempted any prior transfers, those records will show the submissions and who filed them." He paused. "After that, we let the records do the work. The lender investigates the signature. The DMV records speak for themselves. If the evidence supports forgery, I will refer both the cosign and any title submissions to the DAW. I signed the dispute paperwork. Oaks filed the identity theft complaint and the DMV records request before lunch. The DMV response came back within a week. It showed 2 rejected title transfer attempts on my Tacoma, both supported by powers of attorney carrying my name. The first was submitted 14 months earlier. The second, 9 months earlier. Both were denied because the DMV examiner flagged the signatures as inconsistent with my license signature on file. The submitting party listed on both records was Beverly Hewitt, my mother. She had tried to steal my truck twice before she stole it. The first time, 14 months ago, when the Tacoma was not even paid off yet. She had walked into a DMV office with a forged piece of paper and tried to put my truck in Gina's name. When it was denied, she waited 5 months and tried again with the same forged document. When that was denied too, she sent Hank with a spare key. The truck theft was not impulsive generosity. It was the 3rd attempt after 2 failed forgeries. Oaks reviewed the DMV records and sent the 2 forged POA submissions to the DAW's office as potential forgery evidence. He also forwarded the co-signed dispute to Pacific Auto Credit with the DMV signature comparisons attached. The pattern was now visible. 1 forged co-sign on the Equinox, 2 forged POAs at the DMV, and 1 physical theft. All of it done in my name without my knowledge. I almost called Beverly that evening. My thumb was on her name in my phone. Not because I wanted to warn her, because some part of me, the part that had been her daughter for 31 years, wanted to hear her say one true thing. Just one sentence that did not begin with Gina and did not end with an explanation for why I owed something I had never agreed to give. But the title in the lockbox had one name on it, and that name was the only true thing I needed. The following Saturday, Beverly called a family meeting at her dining room table. She told me Gina would be there. She told me Hank would be there. She told me her friend Patrice from across the street would be there as a neutral witness. She said, "We need to settle this like a family before the lawyers make it something it does not need to be." I went. Beverly had prepared. She was sitting at the head of the table. Hank was beside her. Gina was across from me. Her eyes were red again. Patrice, a woman I had spoken to exactly 4 times in my life, was perched on the edge of a dining chair near the window like a juror who was not sure she wanted to serve. Beverly began. "You called the police on your own family. You had officers at your sister's house at 6:40 in the morning. Her boys saw the lights through the window. They thought someone was being arrested. Gina could not get them to stop crying for an hour. You humiliated her in front of her neighbors, and you traumatized her children over a truck." Hank added, "She is your sister Nadia. Family does not call the law on family." Gina said, "Mom told me you were okay with it." I let them finish. I let Beverly make her case. I let Hank perform his role. I let Gina repeat the line she had been given. I sat with my hands flat on the table and my folder on my lap, and I waited until the room settled into the silence that follows a speech that expects applause. Beverly looked at me like she was waiting for the apology. Hank cleared his throat again. Patrice was watching all of us with the careful stillness of a person who has just realized she is not in the room she thought she entered. Then I opened the folder. "Mom," I said, "when you went to the DMV with a power of attorney that had my signature on it, which version of my name did you use?" Beverly's face changed. Not dramatically. The corners of her mouth pulled inward, like a thread had been tightened behind her teeth. Because the DMV examiner noted that the signature used my maiden middle initial. I dropped that initial legally when I was 18. You used a version of my name that has not existed for 13 years. I do not know what you are talking about, Beverly said. You submitted the same forged POA twice, once 14 months ago and once 9 months ago. Both were denied because the signatures did not match my license. The DMV records have your name as the submitting party. My attorney has copies. Patrice shifted in her chair. She looked at Beverly the way you look at someone when the thing you agreed to witness is not the thing you are seeing. When Pacific Auto Credit called me about a co-sign loan on Gina's Equinox, I continued. I requested the origination packet. My name is on page 4. My social security number is on page 2. I did not sign that document. I have never been inside that dealership. The signature does not match my title, my license, or any signature the DMV has on file for me. Gina's hands went under the table. She stared at the surface. I looked at Beverly, then at Gina, then back at Beverly. Mom, you put my name on a cosign for a car Gina totaled in a Dewey. You submitted a forged power of attorney to the DMV twice, trying to transfer my truck to Gina. And when both attempts failed, you sent Hank to my house with a spare key and took it anyway. Then you called me and told me to take the bus. Beverly's mouth was open. Her right hand was gripping the edge of the table. Hank had gone still in a way that large men go still when they realize the room has shifted and they do not know which direction to face. I did not have to outsmart you, Mom, I said. I only had to stop ignoring the records you left behind. Beverly tried. Her voice cracked. I was trying to help Gina. She has 2 boys. She has no car. She has no license. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to ask, I said. You were supposed to pick up the phone and say, Nadia, your sister needs help. Can you help her? And maybe I would have said yes. Maybe I would have driven those boys to school myself. But you did not ask. You forged. You stole. You lied to a bank and a DMV, and then you told me I was not welcome in this family because I dared to buy myself a truck with money I earned. Gina started crying. Not the performance crying from earlier. The real kind, where the sound comes from somewhere behind the ribs. She looked at me through it and said, I did not know about all of it. Mom told me you agreed to the cosign. She said you knew. And the truck? I said, did you think I agreed to give you my paid-off Tacoma while I was not home? Gina did not answer. She put her face in her hands. I set the folder on the table, 60 payments. 5 years. One name on the title. You never asked because you knew I would say no. That was the line. The room received it the way rooms receive things that cannot be taken back. Patrice was looking at the floor. Hank was looking at Beverly. Beverly was looking at the folder like it was an animal she did not want to touch. Beverly tried one more time. Her voice was shaking now. Nadia, please, I am your mother. I made a mistake. But everything I did because Gina was drowning and I could not watch her go under. You did not make a mistake, I said. A mistake is something you do once and regret. You submitted a forged document to the DMV 14 months ago. When it was denied, you tried again. When that was denied, you sent your husband with a key. And somewhere in between, you put my name on a $24,000 loan for a car your other daughter was about to destroy while driving drunk. That is not a mistake, Mom. That is a project. The word landed. Project. I watched Beverly's face absorb it. She had spent the entire meeting framing herself as a desperate mother. I had just reframed her as an architect. No more spare keys, I said. No more forged signatures. No more loans with my name that I did not sign. No more taking what I earned and handing it to someone who wrecks everything she touches. This is the last time I sit at this table. My attorney has filed the identity theft dispute with Pacific Auto, referred the 2 forged POAs to the DAW, and documented the vehicle theft. Every filing names you, Mom. The co-signed dispute names Gina, and the vehicle incident report names Hank. Hank looked at Beverly. Beverly did not look back. She was gripping the edge of the table, and the wood was creaking under her fingers. Patrice stood up. She picked up her purse from the back of the chair and said, I am going to go, Bev. She did not say goodbye. She did not offer comfort. She walked out the front door without looking at anyone else in the room. Beverly watched her leave. That was the moment I saw my mother understand that the audience she had invited to validate her had walked out on her side of the stage, and there was no one left in the room who believed the version she had been telling herself for 14 months. I picked up my folder and walked out. 3 days later, Beverly tried her last move. Gina's older boy, 7 years old, rang my doorbell on a Tuesday afternoon. He was wearing a red winter coat, zipped to his chin, and holding a folded piece of notebook paper in both hands like it was something fragile. He looked up at me with the eyes of a child who has been told to do something and does not understand why but knows it matters to the person who told him. Grandma told me to give this to you, he said. She said she is sorry and she wants you to come to dinner. I looked at the note in his hands. I did not take it. I knelt down on the porch so I was at his eye level, and I put my arms around him and held him for a few seconds. He smelled like fabric softener and peanut butter. He is 7 years old, and he did not choose any of this, and he should not have been standing on my porch delivering a message that his grandmother did not have the courage to deliver herself. I love you, I said. And none of this is about you. Not one piece of it. He nodded. He was not sure what I meant, but he believed me. I walked him down the driveway to Beverly's sedan idling at the curb. Beverly was in the passenger seat. Hank was driving with both hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead. I leaned down to the open passenger window. Beverly's face was a mixture of hope and fear, and the hope was worse because it meant she thought this might work. I handed the note back through the window. I did not unfold it. I did not read it. Do not send your grandchildren to deliver messages you should be delivering yourself, I said. They are not envelopes. They are children. And they have been through enough. Beverly opened her mouth. Nothing came. I stepped back from the car. Hank put it in drive. They pulled away from the curb and turned left at the end of the street, and the boy waved at me from the back seat window as they disappeared. I walked back inside and closed the door and stood in the hallway with my back against it and breathed until the shaking in my hands stopped. The weeks that followed moved slowly. Pacific Auto confirmed that my fraud dispute had passed its initial review and that collection activity against me was suspended while the lender completed its signature investigation. Several weeks later, they confirmed in writing that I would not be held responsible for the account. The deficiency balance of $18,600 reverted to Gina as the sole borrower. She had no income, no license, and no vehicle. The lender offered her a payment plan. She could not meet the terms. By mid-December, Beverly and Hank were carrying legal bills they had never budgeted for. The Dawes office had opened a formal investigation into the 2 forged POA submissions, and Beverly had retained her own attorney. The retainer was $4,500, and the attorney warned her that if the case moved forward, the total cost would likely reach $15,000 or more. On top of that, Beverly had been covering part of Gina's rent at $850 a month, plus groceries, plus the bond payment from the August due. Hank sat at their kitchen table one evening and spread out the credit card statements and the checking account balance and the attorney's invoice and looked at Beverly and said, "We cannot keep doing this. There is nothing left to keep doing it with. Nothing collapsed overnight. The money simply stopped stretching far enough, and unlike the truck, there was no one left to take from." Beverly's neighbor, a woman who had lived across the street for 11 years and shared Beverly's front porch on summer evenings and driven Beverly to a knee surgery 2 Christmases ago, saw Beverly's name in the local court filings. She walked across the street on a Sunday morning in her church clothes and stood on Beverly's porch with her purse over her shoulder. "I saw your name in the system, Bev," she said. "Forgery, 2 counts. At the DMV, against your own daughter." Beverly started to explain. She started the way she always starts, with Gina and the boys and the school and the doctor and the custody weekends. The neighbor listened for 30 seconds. Her expression did not change. When Beverly paused to breathe, the neighbor said, "I drove you to your surgery. I sat in that waiting room for 4 hours. I brought you soup for a week. And the whole time your daughter was paying off a truck that you were trying to steal from her." She adjusted her purse strap. "I have to go. I just needed to hear you say it was true." She walked back across the street. She did not come back. The following Saturday, Beverly saw her in the driveway washing her car. Beverly waved. The neighbor did not wave back. She turned the hose toward the far side of the car and kept spraying. "If you are still here, stay with me, because the ending is the part I want you to carry. This is Family Secret Tales. The endings are why we are here." Beverly called my phone 4 times the first week of December. Each call went to voicemail. She did not leave a message the first 3 times. The 4th time she said 11 words, "I am your mother. Please pick up. I need to talk." I saved the voicemail. I played it once. Her voice sounded thinner than I had ever heard it. I did not call back. On a Saturday morning, she drove to my house. I was in the kitchen making coffee. I heard Hank's truck pull into the driveway and idle. The engine has a slight knock when it is cold, a sound I have heard 100 times, a sound that used to mean a visit and now meant something I did not have a name for. I heard the passenger door. I heard Beverly's shoes on the concrete, then on the porch steps, one at a time, slower than I remembered. She knocked 3 times. She said my name. She waited. She said it again, quieter. I stood in the kitchen with my mug in both hands and watched the front door. The deadbolt was on. The chain was set. The Tacoma was in the garage and the title was in the lockbox, and every forged document she had submitted was now sitting in folders at the Dawes office and Oakes's filing cabinet. She knocked once more. Softer. The knock of someone who knows she will not be let in, but needs to go through the motion so she can tell herself she tried. She stood on the porch for 6 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the microwave. I could hear her breathing through the door. At one point, I heard her say something so quiet it was almost not a word, just the shape of my name set into the wood of the door like a prayer spoken into hands. Then I heard her walk down the steps and heard the truck door and heard Hank say something low and heard the engine pull away from the curb. She had driven 20 minutes to stand on a porch for 6 minutes and learn what she already knew. The garage door was closed. The Tacoma was inside. The oil stain was under the truck where it belonged. Beverly had seen the closed garage from the driveway and known the truck was there and known that the woman who owned it was inside the house and known that neither the door nor the woman was going to open for her. I almost went to the door. My hand was on the deadbolt and I could feel the cold of the metal through my palm. 31 years of opening every door my mother knocked on. 31 years of answering every call and driving to every crisis and believing that the next time would be different because she was my mother and mothers do not take from their children without asking. But the title in the lockbox had one name on it, and the POA at the DMV had a name on it that was not mine. In handwriting that was not mine. Submitted by a woman who had decided that what I owned was hers to redistribute. I took my hand off the deadbolt and went back to the kitchen. By January, the investigation was moving through the system the way investigations move, slowly, officially, without caring who it inconvenienced. Beverly had a preliminary hearing on the calendar. She was not sleeping well. Hank had stopped going to his Thursday poker night because 2 of the men at the table had heard about the court filing, and he did not want to sit across from their questions. Gina was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 boys and no vehicle and no license and a deficiency balance she could not pay. She took the bus to the grocery store twice a week, the same bus Beverly had told me to ride. The truck she had been given for 3 days was back in my garage, clean and warm and titled in the name of the person who had paid for it. The forged POAs Beverly had submitted were sitting in a Dawes evidence folder with her name on the submission line. My garage door was closed. My truck was inside. My title was in the lockbox. My credit dispute was resolved. The difference between my mother's kitchen and mine was not money or punishment or distance. It was that everything inside my house had my name on it, and I had signed for every piece of it myself. March came in cold and gray. I stood in my garage on a Saturday morning with coffee in my hand and looked at the Tacoma. The truck was clean. I had washed it the day before in the driveway, running the hose over the hood until the water sheeted off in one smooth pull, and then I had dried it with the same chamois cloth I bought the day I drove it off the lot 5 years ago. The garage door was down. The new opener was clipped to the visor. The spare key was in my kitchen drawer, not in Beverly's purse, not on Hank's ring, not in any hand but mine. The lockbox under my bed held the title, clean and clear, one name, sole owner, no liens, no forged co-signers, no fraudulent POAs pending at any government office in the state. The garage smelled like cold concrete and motor oil, and the faint trace of exhaust from when I had let the engine idle for a few minutes that morning to warm it up. The oil stain was under the truck where it had always been. The fluorescent light hummed the way it had hummed the night I came home to an empty garage, except now the light was falling on something instead of nothing. Della texted me at 7:14. 3 words. First day again. I smiled at that. Because it was. The truck was mine the way it had been mine the day I drove it off the lot. Except now I understood what mine actually meant. It meant 60 payments that never bounced and never missed and never went to anyone else's account. It meant a title in a fireproof box. It meant a garage door that only opens when I tell it to, with a code that only I know, in a house where no one has a spare key anymore. It meant that nobody in my family, not my mother, not my sister, not my stepfather, with a set of instructions from a woman who believes that everything I build belongs to whoever needs it more, would ever sit in that driver's seat again without asking me first. And they would not ask. Because they already know the answer. I locked the garage door behind me. The deadbolt clicked. The coffee was warm. The morning was cold. The truck was inside, in the dark, in the space I pay for, on the stain it made, behind a door that stays closed until I open it. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story reminded you that what you earn is yours to keep, share it with someone who is still learning that. Subscribe to Family Secret Tales. I will see you in the next one.